And thank you for participating in the Los Angeles chapter's three-part series, Conversations, Grammys, Bridges the Gaps. I'm Kiana Conley, your Los Angeles chapter executive director of the Recording Academy. And welcome, and thank you for being here today. There it is. I was waiting for it. I'm like, I know you guys have done this before. There it is. Thank you. So now, we will kick off today's discussion with our producers and engineers. The title is Immersive Audio, Center-Powered and Beating Stereo Every Time.
Thank you, Kiana. Jesus, Josh. Wow. All right, let's just start. When did everybody kind of dive into immersive, and like what made you do it? Because a lot of our peers are still in stereo at the moment. So what made you do it and when?
Well, I'll go first. I had some friends who, Maurice at PMC and some other folks who were seeing the format kind of coming our way right before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, I thought, what better time than to just, build out an Atmos room. So really, most of those months, those lonely months in early 2020, I just spent 3 or 4 months really. I wanted to really understand the format. I wanted to know how it worked. I wanted to know how the gear worked. I didn't want someone to come and like plug everything in for me, because if something breaks, I wanted to be able to fix it. So I spent those early lonely months just learning where every Dante cable plugged in and where every speaker was getting fed, and so that was it for me.
Okay.
Well, I guess 3 years ago, it went on my radar, and I was very reluctant, resistant. I was a bit Gen X in my Gen X way. And then when it became clear that it was going to be a real thing, and it was going to be a part of our existence that wasn't going away, which was maybe 2 years ago, then I really, at that point, just dug in. And similarly, kind of wanted to figure it out more than just being able to do it. So my thing was looking at the releases at the time, thinking of my standards from stereo work. I sort of decided quickly that the format was needing some analog, and so I went with like an analog mastering approach, and then worked real hard on that, for a year. And then my mom died quite suddenly last year, and we were very close, so I had lots of sad time. Instead of feeling sorry for myself, I doubled down and took all the techniques I had learned and just spent a ridiculous amount of time, maybe a year ago, for 3 or 4 months, even after the releases that we've mentioned. So even since the releases of note that were mentioned, I've just taken it further and further, and now I'm at a place where I feel pretty comfortable with it. But so it was a process of resistance, acceptance, and then really, really going for it.
My experience is a little different. I came from the film and TV background, so for us, we were working with Adobe Atmos software and then technology since the day it pretty much started. So the first day, as soon as I got into the film and TV industry, I was immediately trained up on Dolby Atmos, including home theater Atmos, and then later with the theatrical Atmos, which is something that that's only for feature and films. And I'm really happy now to see that I think Atmos has been standardized as a platform, because I think in general it makes the consumers who care more about the quality of the sound. So I think from that perspective, it's a really good thing for the industry, especially the sound industry, that now it's such a standardized platform. Yeah.
You guys hear that rain? Oh, hope it's not raining when you cross the street after this. Yeah. A couple years ago, I was approached from Dolby to make a room, and at the time I wasn't really into it because I was already doing so much with stereo and working with artists, and I felt like I didn't have time to do it, just like personally. And then after a little while, I started realizing that as a mixer, that the format you have to deliver in immersive now, in Atmos or whatever you want to call it. And it's either I hand off my projects and my work to other people to do it, or we keep it under one roof and quality control and make sure that what we're putting out kind of is up to our standards in a sense. So we took the plunge, and kind of haven't looked back. You know, it's if you're not delivering your mixes in Atmos, then you're giving it to someone else to deliver in Atmos. And so we made the decision to do it ourselves.
Okay. So with the new format, what was the first project that you mixed, and then how did you know when you were finished? Because what's the finish line if it's something new and it's uncharted territory?
We'll go this way this time. I don't remember the first project I mixed in Atmos, to be honest. It just started coming fast and heavy. And to the point of when it's done, it's still I'm kind of getting to the point where I feel like I know it's getting done properly, but there's still a lot of mystery and smoke behind it. And luckily, we could rely on mastering engineers who care more about the technical side of things than I care about, to really take it and keep it to where it has to be delivery-wise. There's just a lot more information than there is in stereo, and you know it takes a long time to just get stereo down and to understand stereo, and so you know Atmos is still a little mysterious to me, but it's not going to stop me from doing it. You know, I rely on people that have more experience and people that are smarter than I am to help take it to the finish line if I need to.
For us, there's budget and there's the time that the budget can afford for. So at the end of the time that your budget can account for, your sound mix has to be finished. And I hear the sentence so often where people, top level recording mixers after their films or television has aired, and they're still sitting at home. I wish I can turn that line down, or if I could turn the sound up. So I feel like there really never is a finishing mix. If you want to do something more to it, there's always something more that you could try or make it better. And I think it's just giving the time and the budget you've been referred to, you plan out what you can do to make it sound the best it can.
Well, this is a really great question. The first part of the question, the first thing I did was the Greatest Showman soundtrack, and that was a Greg Wells thing. Greg is well known, a wonderful, awarded, fantastic mixer, producer, engineer, artist. And so how, with something that important, how did I know it was done? That's the great question. So if I could just for a second, in stereo we have sort of like a mountaintop, and we have an understanding of what's at the top. Yeah. We know what a demo sounds like. We know what a mix is, a great mix. We know what a master is. We may differ on my mastering or her mastering, but it's good, right? In spatial Atmos, we have another mountaintop that we've really kind of sort of been dumped on us, like here's this thing, but we haven't really figured it out as a community. And that's part of what we're doing here, is to try to really understand this new mountain and what is the mountaintop? What does that sound like? What does it look like? So for me, the thing was, it was then and it is now, does it have the qualities in my room that stereo has? Center power and punch being really important, harmonic qualities. Does it sound like a fishbowl of sound with a scooped sensibility that's got the harmonics of an in-the-box demo, or does it really sound like amazing analog sounds, amazing digital sounds? Does it sound like what we're used to in stereo? And so for me, that was and is the goal, is finding that mountaintop. And so I basically evolved techniques where, I sort of visualize a triangle. There's the speakers, or maybe we'll put the Apple at the top, Apple product, speakers, Dolby product. And I sort of bounce between the three with the stereo in the middle, and always kind of triangulating to the stereo. And different world, because my studio is a home studio, and I'm sort of the opposite world. I don't get paid enough for what I do. So I spent 8 hours a mix, and I'm a mastering engineer, so I didn't mix it, but from Greg, I'm spending 8 hours on those. Now today that might be an hour, it might be 3, so I've got it down. But it was just go until the end of the road, And then there was obviously a meeting with the, there was a Greg meeting, and there was a meeting with the producers or the pianists as well. So to me, it's been about that really tricky question, which is what's the mountaintop of this thing?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the frame of reference? And so as we develop a frame of reference, I think we're all going to feel a lot better. And that's been my goal from the beginning, is get that frame of reference.
When I think of, I can't remember my first mix, but like early Atmos reminds me of like, I did like Doja Cat Woman and some JoJo stuff. All really awesome sounding things coming in. The Stereo Master sounded awesome. And so in my mind, I was like, well, the finish line, this has to be at least as great as the stereo reference. That was kind of my ruler. So constantly A-Bing, just like I do in stereo mastering, I'm constantly A-Bing against the ref. So I carried that forward. And, you know, a lot of the things we benefit from in Atmos is increased dynamic range. We don't necessarily need to compress and limit and saturate things as much in this format. So in my mind, Atmos, in these early things going against the stereo, I'm like, it better be as good or better. And so that's kind of where that was my ruler. And not only did it need to sound better in the room, but I knew that the consumer, the end product, 99% of people were going to be listening on headphones, you know, on their AirPod Maxes or whatever. So I wanted to make sure that it not only sounded good in not only sounded good in the room, but also in the headphones as well. And that's the part of the process that could take 8 hours. You could get it slamming in the room, you put on the headphones, and you're like, ooh, you know, we have some adjustments to make.
I was gonna ask, what's your equivalent to the car test? Since
The car test.
the car test for
I
Atmos?
take
Yeah?
one of my tests, especially in high pressure situations where I need to deliver. I take my phone and I play the Atmos out through stereo in my car, and you would be surprised how many imbalances you will pick up when you hear the stereo re-render in your car.
That's interesting. I've never tried that.
It's scary.
I brought this along for show. This is the end reference for me, the new AirPod Pro 2. These are $200. They came out in September. I do bounce between the three formats, but final decision is here. But what I've found is that when they're all working together, it comes to a point and you're like, okay, that's it. It can't be better. And it's very important to have instantaneous A-Bing. So Logic Pro will stream to this, and you can stream through the Dolby renderer into Logic Pro, where you can listen to that product, and then you can A/B, like I've got a little Stream Deck button where I can instantaneously A/B with the stereo master that's in Logic. So that's part of the process. A/Bing, frame of reference, the mountaintop, that's the whole pie here. That's the tricky part. And so for me, when it's done is when doing this test, it's just clearly better than the stereo. Now people say, well, how could that be? Because you have the DSP, and that does create a phase problem on center punch, right? The beautiful thing of stereo headphones, no DSP, so the kick and the bass and the vocal, they hit you really solidly. So the trick with the format is, in stereo, we've learned how to jam a whole bunch of stuff into two speakers with limited dynamic range and not have it be a phasey, comb-filtered mess, right? That's part of that skill of stereo that we all study and learn. The trick in this format is it comes to you big, the dynamics are there, the space is triple the size. You've got triple the canvas, maybe double the dynamics, my language. But you have got this phase issue from the DSP that comes from these. And so the engineering trick is to get around that DSP, just in the same way in stereo we've learned to get around the phase issues of the limitation. In this format, we're getting around the phase issues of the DSP that creates this washy sound.
Okay. A fun question. Do you have artists come and sit in on your spatial mixes like they do, like the typical stereo mixes?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah?
Maybe like 4 times out of all
Did
the
they
stuff.
understand what was going on versus the stereo thing, or?
I mean, most artists that come and listen just want to make sure that there's nothing weird happening with the mixes.
Right.
Because they spend some artists spend a lot of time and revisions on their stereo mixes, to the point where sometimes you're dialing in quarter decibel of EQ or volume changes. And so to take it into a new format and you're opening things up and you do have more space and immersive, there's also a lot more room for error. And a lot of what I'm doing when I'm mixing is making sure that it matches a stereo. If it's not matching, it has to beat it. If it's not beating or matching my stereo mix, then something's terribly wrong. And so what I try to do for my artists is to make sure that when they hear it, there's not a shock. It sounds like the mix, and there's nothing weird happening to the point where even if it's subconscious, if it's, you hear something in a mix that's subconsciously wrong, it takes your mind off the song immediately, and you don't know what it is maybe, but something's wrong, and I just try to make sure that there's nothing too wrong that I can't fix or hide. I don't know.
Y'all had any artists show up to mastering sessions?
No, but I do invite people over a lot to kind of show the mountaintop. It's to educate and to share, because it's a corporate thing, right? So the artists are the least informed, and so a lot of my guests are that. Just come over and hear it, and then let's listen. A/B on the Apple, A/B on the Dolby, and it's more of that.
Okay. And
Oh, I was gonna say, for us it's a little different because our workflow is very much, we mix big first and then we down mix instead of finishing stereo mix first. So our stereo mix come from after we finish the Dolby mix, and then we do the surround mix, 5.1 mix, and then we do the stereo mix. So the traditional way of a film or television that is mixed, is for film specifically, we have print mastering and versioning days where we finish the whole theatrical Atmos mix with our clients, directors and producers, of course, when they listen to it and they're happy with the sound. Because dub stages where films are mixed, they pretty much looks like a movie theater. So they immediately is already going to be able to tell how their movie is going to sound in a theater. And then after that, we have print mastering and versioning days. That's when we create the 5.1 mix, the 7.1 mix, and then the stereo mix. We also have versioning days for near-field releases for when like a movie leaves the theater and get put on Netflix or HBO. And then for those days, a lot of the times, like re-recording mixers will already be thinking about how they're mixing them so they can still be represented accurately on television. For us, one of the biggest things is to check on tabloids, on our small, sometimes we put up a set of small consumer-based speakers to check for dialogue clarity, which is one of our big things for a huge action shows. A lot of times if you have loud sound effects and music, that's something that's very important to check. And I have, like, the most recent feature I just finished working off of, the picture editor and a lot of the production team, they actually really much cared about the near field mix that's going to be released on streaming platforms. They will come and listen to how things are done mixing. And those are the times when re-recording mixers will be making like small tweaks. When we're crashing down, we makes the music when they're crashing down into stereo a little lower so they're not overstepping sound effects or dialogue, just little things like that. So that's kind of been our process. And for every mix, no matter what your version is, our director and producers always show up to listen to it, yeah.
okay. So this can work for you. So do certain films and genres of music lend themselves better to Atmos than others?
I definitely think so. And the crazy thing is now that like Apple TV and Netflix has standardized all the series are delivered in Atmos. So you will see like something that's just really like rom-com or very just walk and talk film and TV, and they're still being mixed in Atmos. But then you'll see like huge action films sometimes for Amazon. For Amazon, they're still doing a lot of 5.1 mixes as well, where a lot of people actually came to me and thought, oh, like The Boys sounds so cool, it must be mixed in Atmos. And I always tell people it's actually a 5.1 mix. Oh, wow. Yeah, for that one, I thought there could be like so much cool elements, and the fact that it sounds so amazing in 5.1. Like my mentors who makes that TV show where I mix tech on the show, I always I feel so amazed that every day at work just listen to their mixes. So I definitely think there are genres like a lot of action. If you're going to space, a lot of those sound designs is set up to have an atmospheric mix because it has the elements of using the heights in the audio space. Yeah.
I think this is a really great point because it sort of illuminates the difference between the format as it started for film and TV and as it is for music. So for film and TV, like she was saying, you know, if something does these exciting big things, that's cooler. But in music, it's not that way at all. Right. So what's that question sort of at the basis of that question for our world and in the music world is really just the sense that we need to develop our skills more, because this format is better for every style of music every time, because it's a different thing than film. Film is about this big thing. And for spatial Atmos music, it's about bringing the center power in, which is where music lives. Music comes from mono, it goes to stereo, it goes to spatial Atmos. All of it exists down the middle. That's where we emotionally connect. That's the groove, that's the vocal in pop music. So for the music world, it's a really new thing. And it's a new thing that has different rules. So the idea that, oh, this format only works for this style or that style in terms of music is not true. That's just a question of, is the engineering good enough to make it work or is it not? It's actually better for all styles as a headphone product, right? We're not competing with stereo. Right. We're just saying as a headphone product, spatial Atmos done well beats the stereo every time. Okay. That's the standard. That's the standard that we're evolving in this new form, which is different from film where, oh, great, sound effects and versus dialogue. It's not that, because music is always about what's down the middle. We're just doing a bigger version of something that has that middle power.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're almost done. Last question. Any advice?
That's it?
Well, we got to hit the Q&A.
Oh, yeah.
If y'all don't have any, I got some more. But any advice on any engineers that want to dive into Atmos? Like, what do you have?
I'll start. There's this need in a lot of us engineers to make the most of all of the features, and so when you get someone's first Atmos mix, you see all the objects and everything's going like this the whole time, and that's cool and stuff, but I am of the mindset that Atmos could be as basic. An Atmos mix could be as basic as a stereo mix in an Atmos wrapper. And what I mean is that we don't necessarily need to use every feature. We don't necessarily need to have something behind us. We don't necessarily need to have things flying above us. If what serves the song best is to have everything in front, have everything in front. And don't feel there is a push from certain labels, from certain people, from even certain corporations that want us to make every Atmos mix totally immersive. But if you're mixing something and it's a piano and a vocal on stage, there's no need for anything behind you except for some ambience. So I would just say be comfortable with doing what you feel intuitively it needs to be done, and don't feel like you need to cater to having things be pizzazzy, I'm
gonna jump with that real quick too, because my mixing philosophy is, like I said earlier, if it distracts you, it's probably not right for the song. I like when I'm listening to a good song, even if it's old, I like to close my eyes and I like it to pick me up and take me away from where I am and just put me in a place. And when I'm in that place, I don't get out of that place until I open my eyes. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in my room. Or I'm sorry, oh man, I'm in my room.
Nah, you're good.
And so with Atmos or Immersive, I'm not trying to make anything spin around and do all that stuff anyway. I'm just trying to make it feel good to where I close my eyes, I'm teleported. And for people that are trying to get into it, I think the best way to do it is just start mixing and keep mixing and mixing and mixing until you don't hate it. And until you show your friends and they like it. And, it keeps building from there. You just got to put the time in, really.
So on a musical level, of course, I agree totally, but I'm going to say something a little different. If we want to get into this, AirPod Pro 2s, Logic Pro, you spent $400. You take your stereo mix that you've got and you break it out into stems where one pair is the lead vocal, but it's dry, and the effects of that vocal can be on another pair or multiple pairs. And you need 20 to maybe 40, maybe as many as 50 total pairs. So, well, sorry, pairs, 25, 10 to 25 pairs, 20 to 50 objects. And differently, I'll say, what I've discovered is the format wants to be used. In other words, from a headphone standpoint, the problem with the format that we hear on many releases, not all, is the lack of punch and power. That's coming from the DSP. So you can think of the DSP as this thing that exists all the time. And if we fill the sound field, it's like signal to noise. So the phase issue from this DSP is the noise of this format. And if we don't fill the whole field, we get excessive phase smear because we're putting a little reverb tail in the back, which is already phasey by its nature, and it gets worse. So what I would argue is the best way to go is to fill the field front to back, top to bottom with your objects. Fill it up. To look at everything on the left as the left, top to bottom, that's your left speaker, in your headphone. Everything on the right is the right, and fill the thing up. Because it's sort of like if you had a 24-track tape machine and you only recorded on 8 tracks of it and you let the other 16 run, you would have noise, right? And it's kind of, that's the analogy. The DSP is the problem. The DSP is also the solution. Like it's the reason we have the size, but it also makes the smear, it makes the punch difficult. So when we fill the thing up front to back and top to bottom, then you can just go in and tweeze out some frequencies, some low energy, some high energy, maybe push some mid-range per object pair. So now you're looking at 90 minutes later, you've filled the space, you've represented the stereo. Nothing is doing, like Josh is saying, nothing's doing crazy shit. But you've made something that's helping to overwhelm the DSP problem, the phase problem, by filling the space. So I look at it that way, that the goal is to better the stereo in the headphone, and the way to do that is to solve this phase issue that's created by the blessing of the size.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I'll go to.
finish it up.
I think being in the film industry, for me, every year there's no technology. There's updates of software that I have to keep updated to keep up with the industry. So I think one big thing is like when there's new technology coming out, it's very crucial to learn the details of it, learn how your speakers are set up in your mix room. For us, home theater itself is very different even from theatrical RMU because you have your traditional 916 set up with your home theater Atmos, whereas in a theatrical room will have an array of speakers where they fill the side of the walls of how big your mix room is. Sonically that makes sense to. So in that case, when you're panning an object versus when you're panning your single source in a bed, it's very different when you're mixing in a theatrical Atmos environment. It's going to be a lot more discrete point source, and then it's when you're panning in your bed, you're panning in your sides, which is array of speakers that could vary from, depends on the size of the room you're in, that are going from these 3, these 4 to like to the back of the wall. Whereas in home theater, that difference between panning the object versus panning your beds could be less noticeable in that sense. So I think when you're not understanding where your sound is coming from is when you might start making things that doesn't sound realistic anymore. And to us, making a live action film and television, it's very important that we were able to trick all the audience because we recreate all the sound to the video. It's very important for us to trick all of you guys think this was just all recorded on set and make you feel like you're not jumping out. So I think in that sense, we're very similar to music. Is like, what matters is what's happening on the screen. The story is on the screen, and all the audience has to be engaged. And whatever sonically that makes sense is what, as mixers and sound teams, has to go for in that case. But then it also gets very different when you're mixing animation because there's a lot more creativity in that. I think there's a lot of elements you could make very dramatic sounding because you're already making up an environment. So, but yes, I think one of the big things is take the time to learn the room you're mixing in. Take the time to understand the details of the technology and the settings within the technology. And then you'll understand when you're mixing what you're doing to your mix.
Y'all are brilliant. I love this. We have any questions out
We
here?
do. Thank you so much, team and panel. We're happy to welcome Carter Tews, who is one of our Grammy U campus ambassadors. Carter is a student of the LA Film School, and he has the first question for the Q&A.
With the actual hardware limitations with spatial audio, like the DSP issue, and in a shopping mall, you can't have Dolby Atmos. It's gonna be all over the place. Do you think that would also hinder the more use of Atmos as well?
Well, I think one of the things we're watching in terms of technology is I'm seeing cars. I'm thinking homes. Cars in the next 5 to 10 years will mainly have, if all things go as planned, we'll have Atmos capable systems. Most homes take a little bit longer because homes last a little bit longer than a car, but say 20 to 30 years, we're going to have a lot of newish homes with immersive home theaters. So I think that we're, yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of thinking of what the end user is going to be able to experience, and I would imagine, seeing it a lot more out even in mall environments, and I could imagine not to say that what you're saying isn't true, because it would be crazy, but if you took a stereo down mix of an Atmos and played that throughout, I mean, all that to say is there are answers to every problem.
All right, who else has questions? Angela?
Yeah, I mean, if I could hit that real quick. I mean, being a little older, I mean, I remember when Quad came out when I was a kid. So there's been this dream of the home immersive things my whole life, and I think it's BS. I don't think that people are going to have that. They may have a Sonos bar that does Atmos. They may, which is cool. They may have on the laptop. It's great. So there may come a day, but time will work that out. In the meantime, we've got 70 years of experience. We can work from what we have, and that transition will just kind of work itself out over time.
There's also to VR. I mean, maybe the immersive thing doesn't work in a home environment, but a lot of what's to come technology-wise, at least what our technology corporations want to bring to us is goggles and immersive.
Totally.
They want us to be able to experience concerts at home, lifelike, and that'll be another place for the immersive format to sit if they have their way.
The Apple VR development budget is a number that none of us can imagine. So that's for sure. That's for sure happening.
Well, hi again. To your point, I was recently at South by Southwest and was informed at Dolby House regarding new technology that they're planning to put and make more wide and mainstream. So, for example, having Dolby Atmos in cars, they've already added it in the Maybach.
The Maybach.
Yes. When it comes to live music, they have a new product that they're looking to release where they want to put Dolby Atmos for live concert. Obviously, there are artists who record or want to release a live concert album. When that happens, so you have a body of work that was recorded in Atmos and then it's brought to you all, and they're asking for you to release it or, engineer it in Atmos. How is that going to affect? Is that helpful to you? You know what I mean? If the concert is already recorded live in Atmos, when it comes to you all at, at your finishing stages, how will that help you? You know what I mean? What does that look like from a live space to your home studio or however you guys end up engineering that?
I feed off of the creativity of others. The thing that inspires me the most as a mastering engineer, whether it be stereo or Atmos, is when I get something that isn't just inspiring. So much creativity was poured in from the artist, from the songwriting, from the production, and then from the mixer, and then you're just bubbling because you get to touch this thing. And I think more as artists, like I said, as this rolls out and we see how it plays out, I would love to see more artists creating for the format, whether it be for a live concert or whether it be for a recording, because then we can really start to see I would say most creative voices are not in the Atmos space yet. They're worried about making something that connects with the listener, whether it be a mix or a song. They're worried about really the stereo. And as we start to see more people like branch out and embrace the space, I'm just excited to see what that, because the artists and these amazing minds, like they're not even here yet. Like in a lot of the cases, I mean, we're really cool, but you know, the artists like
We're lucky.
can really take. Yeah, we are
We're
lucky.
fortunate.
Yeah, we're fortunate.
I'm gonna say it's extremely hard to make a song that's good in stereo, and a mix that's good in stereo, and a production that's good in stereo, and it's hard for me to wrap my brain around unless every single person that's making music has mastered that. To go into a whole nother format is a little scary to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in this era where I think it's important to not be polarizing. It's not a contest. You know, we have stereo that we know and love that's ubiquitous, and we've got 70 years there, and we've got a very, very little window, short window that we've been halfway embracing, you know, without getting into who is and who isn't. Let's just say the building we're in is a building that comes from one of the companies in this game that are halfway embracing, you know, financially. And so when we embrace this more and when we get better and we work on down mixing to stereo, we're going to have these two great options. But right now we have this stereo with the mountaintop that we know. We have this spatial Atmos thing with a mountaintop that we're just looking to catch up to, even what is it? And so when we can have both of those, then they can coexist and they can trade and share, and it doesn't have to be a contest. You know, it just opens up more possibilities. Like Dale's saying, this is inspiring and awesome stuff. So we don't have to, you know, I understand the question like, will this take over that or whatever? I don't know. You know, so what we do know is that we have an amazing opportunity with this format, that we are evolving our skills and our understanding of the frame of reference of what's greatness. And we know what's greatness in stereo. And once we can do both, we have more great things. And this, to Dale's point, or to everybody's point, that's just a win across the board. You know.
We're like explorers.
Really
Hiking
are.
up a mountain.
Come with us.
We don't know what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we might have time for literally one more question. So I do know that there was someone in the audience that asked that one question, but I'm going to ask if only one of you will answer her just for the sake of our time commitment with the space. So Flavia, I saw your hand. You had a question, right? Just kind of stand near the rug and make sure so that we can still get you.
Okay, hi, I'm a music producer. My name is Flavia, and I got certified in Dolby Atmos just this month. And I'm mixing now my first mixes. I'm doing one song from scratch in Dolby Atmos, another one I'm mixing from stereo to Atmos. So my question is, because it's such a huge topic, and I still have a lot of like confusion in my mind. So where do you like to place your lead vocal in the mix? How do you exactly use LFE?
I put my vocal in the middle, and I put my LFE in the middle.
I mean, do you put it on an object or amp?
I put it. I think I put it on a.
LFE has to be in the
Yeah.
Sorry, but the lead vocal on the object or amp?
My lead vocal's in the bed.
Mathematically, beds and objects are the same. So if you do a stereo object or you put it left, right, in the front, it's the same. But make sure it's dry.
Yeah.
And it's going to be better than putting it in the center. The center will be a smaller result. So make it this way, but make it dry.
Yeah. When I said in the middle, like left and right is to me still middle.
That's phantom center.
Yeah.
That's as close to phantom center as we can get with the DSP if it's dry and it's left, right. Bed or object, same result.